What's going on, Colts Nation? Well, the Indianapolis Colts new defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo had his introductory press conference today. And so I want to react to this. It's right around 18 minutes. So we'll listen through it, and then I'll give some of my thoughts on some of the answers that Lou gives. So just wanted to react to this today. He did it this morning. So let's jump right into it, guys.
Well, kind of a quick series of events, I guess, for you the last few weeks. But just what drew you here, and and also in determining that you wanted to come back and coach right away as well.
Yeah, I think if you'd ask most coaches, we don't like staying out very long, and thank God for me, it wasn't long. But great organization from ownership down, and know Shane and how he runs the team and his leadership. And Chris Ballard, how they've, I've looked from afar and always appreciated what this place stands for. So, I've been in this state for a long time. I coached at Purdue for a while, and so I've my kids grew up here. So it's a somewhat home for us.
Did you have a prior relationship with Shane or Chris?
Just through the coaching and competing against each other. Certainly, we've always talked, and we seemed like wherever I was, whether it was Miami or Cincinnati playing the Chargers or the Eagles, going against Shane. So it's always a tough day.
What will it mean for you? For you to put your stamp on this defense, what would that mean?
Well, I think one of the things that we'll hang our hat on it will be, we're always going to try to be a smart, fast, and physical team. Those three things. You don't want to beat yourself in this league. You want to make sure that guys know where their help is on every down, no unforced errors, things like that, where you can eliminate and win games by just allowing the other team to make their mistakes, and we're going to, stay steadfast. If you don't play fast, you don't have a chance, and certainly coming from the AFC North, it's a physical division, and certainly that's everybody in football prides themselves on that, but that's certainly something we'll bring home as well.
You have a
Yeah, so that right there, guys, that definitely is something that we know the defense is in desperate need of. I mean, what he had talked about, the idea of being fast, smart, and physical, right? And honestly, the Colts were really none of those things in 2024. I mean, they had some talent to be that, but they weren't, right? They weren't smart. I mean, there was how many times on those third and longs where, they just wouldn't be able to get off the field. They weren't able to be physical enough. I mean, you saw what opposing runners did against the Colts this year. And, the missed tackles, obviously, another thing as well. And so great to hear him say that. And obviously actions will speak louder than words. But the idea of, you don't want to beat yourself in this league. And that's what the Colts routinely did on defense the last couple of years under Gus Bradley. The unforced error thing I think was good. Just allowing teams to make their own mistakes and making sure it's not their own. I mean, how many games, guys, did the Colts do, a decent job on first and second down, like I said, and then third down, there'd be some sort of communication there, right? There'd be something where, it would just completely erase all the momentum you had on defense. And it was just like a routine thing over the last 2 years, especially. So I like what he had to say about, the three things he mentioned about being smart, being fast, and being physical, because Colts were really none of those things in 2024. And so that's definitely something they got to get better. And, the whole communication, all that kind of stuff, it's got to be leagues better than it's been the last couple of years.
Reputation for, changing your scheme and system based on game plan. How did that develop?
Well, I think you have to be flexible these days and multiple. When you're playing the quarterbacks, especially on our side in the AFC, going against Joe every day in practice, trying to guard T and Jamar and guys like that. And, it lends to not just, hey, you're going to be in this coverage, you're going to stay in that, and be a long day. And then going through the playoffs and things like that into the Super Bowl, you have to keep those great quarterbacks off balance. I think you have to make them uncomfortable. Even the best ones at times, you're not going to fool them all day, but if it's in the most critical situation, that's what you're hoping to do. And certainly that's we've had some success doing that.
I know you haven't had
Yeah, that's another thing that the Colts just did not do at all. It was very much we're going to run our scheme, and it really didn't tailor to the opponent necessarily. And I mean, you saw the result. I mean, routinely, quarterbacks, whether it was, stars in the NFL, whether it was backup quarterbacks, you'd routinely have these games where you'd get absolutely shredded. You'd barely put pressure on the quarterback. And so I like what he said there about just the idea of being flexible and multiple when you're playing against these quarterbacks, because, I mean, he knows as well as anybody, the AFC's loaded, right? There's a ton of different guys that are, really good players in their prime right now, right? You're going to have to face a lot of them this upcoming year. So, yeah, you got to figure it out from week to week. It cannot be this is what we run no matter who our opponent is. That's just not, smart coaching. So Colts got to do that. And I mean, what better guy than Anarumo, who's seen it, right? He's seen it from the other side of the ball with Joe Burrow. And, he's seen it when the Bengals, were in, those big games in 2021 and, 2020. So, yeah, I mean, really, when you look at it, it does make a lot of sense, with the, when the Bengals were in some of those big games in 2021 and 2022. I mean, he saw other great quarterbacks. I mean, the Patrick Mahomes of the world. He saw some of these guys, and he knows what it takes to compete against these guys. And of course, last couple of years haven't been super pretty, but I mean, he's seen it. So that's definitely valuable, and he understands how you need to adapt on a week-to-week basis, which is definitely important. And as a Colts fan, and after seeing how the Colts have not routinely made opposing lives for quarterbacks uncomfortable, it's great to see him say that. Like, you have to just continue to get them off rhythm, make them uncomfortable, and do things, right, to do that. So I love that. I mean, that's exactly what you need to do. And like I said earlier, you got to prove that you can do it, but that mindset, that's exactly what you got to do. And that might mean sending some extra guys on a blitz. That might mean, disguising some stuff. All that kind of stuff, I think, is so critical. And frankly, it's something the Colts haven't done in the past couple of years.
A chance to do a deep dive into the players, but just on surface level, just what were first impressions for you?
Very excited, both me to come and talk to them and them to come to talk to me. So, spoke to a number of them on the phone. Some guys have popped in and, just ready to go to work. I know we're still a ways away from that. We're just starting, but the guys have been super excited, and so am I.
From a talent perspective, do you know much about these guys? Or
Absolutely. I mean, I think we've had Pro Bowlers at each level at some point in their careers. It all starts up front. Those guys can affect the game more than anybody. And we've got some good players up there. And then as you go through the linebacking core and then the DBs, there's certainly guys that can affect the game as well. So, we're going to jump into all that here. And, this is day 2, I think. So we're hit the ground running.
You got to coach in the Super Bowl and had some high highs, but why do you think things kind of tapered off at the end in Cincinnati? What did you maybe learn from that you can apply here?
I think every year in the NFL, my 6 years at Cincy, we had 4 winning seasons and 2 AFC championship games and a Super Bowl. The first 2, we were kind of working our way through the roster, and it was an older roster. We were able to get kind of the guys we wanted to. I think we all deal with different types of things as the seasons change, whether injuries or things like that. So I just feel like, if you're not consistent enough, and that's something that we weren't maybe the last year or two, that'll affect how wins and losses end up. Last year, 23, Joe went down for us. So, and then this year, they put up some great numbers, and we had some of our issues that we had to deal with. But you learn from those things, you move on and on to the next.
You think change down the stretch for you all the last 5 games?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're sitting there. I think it starts with you hear the word culture all the time, but I think that's a word that shows up when things aren't going so well. When things are going well, it's everybody's going to be on board. Everybody's pulling the rope the same direction. It's in those challenging times where, we're 4-8, not playing great. And the leadership in the room, guys that we've been to war with to, whether it's a playoff game or preseason game, whatever it may be, we would not allow anybody to let go of the rope. And so not only do we get better, we end up winning, as you mentioned, 5 in a row. Beat 2 playoff teams, Denver and the Steelers, held the Steelers to under 200 yards in a game that we needed, they needed. So I just think, the younger guys that were playing for us, they kind of felt like they belonged, after a while. And, we really started taking the ball away. That was another thing that was important. And we had Trey Hendrickson, and Trey, led the league in sacks. And anytime you got a guy like that, it can really affect the game. So, but I think it starts and ends with the leadership and the culture of leadership from the coaches, and then certainly from the players as well. And that's important. That's something that we'll dive into here. I know Shane has done a great job with that. We'll keep it going.
How long does it take for a defense to kind of start behaving the way you want them to behave?
I don't think you put a timetable on it. It'll be a work in progress. Certainly before the first game, we've got time. So, we'll go through OTAs, we'll go through training camp, and by the time we lace it up for the first game, we'll be hitting on all cylinders.
I'm sure the blitz numbers that we see are probably a little bit off, but it looks like yours went down over your time in Cincinnati. Why?
That's just game by game. It could be. I like bringing Mike Hilton off the slot. We've got a guy that's very similar, Kenny Moore. It depends on the situation and who we're playing, but no real specific reason for that.
Particular position group that needs to be really strong for your defense to be at its peak?
Well, I think I don't care what defense or what style you're playing. I think if you can hang your hat on, as I mentioned earlier, the guys up front, and then certainly you always want guys that can process and be, smart, forward thinkers and problem solvers out there. You don't want robots, and that's something that we pride ourselves on is, we're going to come to the sideline and we're all going to be working at this together. The guys are out there. So, the linebackers talking to me, DBs talking to linebackers, linebackers talking to D-line and always trying to solve problems, always trying to fix what the issues are. And not just the coaches, the players too. That's a big part of it, and we'll talk to them that way.
You are sort of somewhat game plan specific. What does that require from the players in terms of like being locked in and being on top of things?
Well, I think it's just a matter of, you're going to identify what the team does well, identify who the problem players are. Where's the great receiver and what do we got to do to slow him down? Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, guys like that, we had to play twice a year. They present multiple problems along with, Zay Flowers and guys like that. So, whoever or whatever the issues are, you want to put it in front of the guys and say, okay, if we can take these guys away or minimize their damage in the game, we're going to give ourselves a chance to win.
Lou, the best coaches do more with less. Are you good enough to win, to get it done if you don't have great players?
I mean, I think every coach would say, you want we're not out there making tackles and getting off blocks. You're going to have good players, that's for sure. But I know this, this league these days, guys are in and out of the lineup for a number of different reasons. The rosters turn over. So you've got to be flexible enough as a coach to be able to work with a guy that maybe was not even on your team the week before. So I think we've all dealt with that. I'll never forget, give you a story. I was at Miami. It was my first year in the NFL, 2012. We claimed a guy off of waivers. It was later in the year. It's like we had, I think, 3 games left, and he had an issue with his flight. So Wednesday during practice, this is the first time I meet the guy. He's running out of the facility in the middle of practice. He missed the beginning because of the flight. And I'm like, hey, Dimitri, how you doing? Coach Lou. All right, get in there. And he was going to start on Sunday. Made a mental error on the first play of the game and then played 61 really good plays the rest of the way. So I think, you deal with the instances that come about and you handle it and you go from there.
There was a lot made of Jesse Bates leaving Cincinnati. Is that role specifically that he played essentially your defense?
Jesse's a great football player. He's a problem solver. He can go get the ball. He's a guy that he checks a lot of boxes, right? Smart, good tackler, great ball skills, communicates. So, you get a guy like that, certainly it's going to hurt any defense, and he's shown his worth in Atlanta. DJ Reader was another key component for us. that went to Detroit this year. So I think anytime you're strong up the middle, that's going to be something that helps, again, any defense, not just ours.
If some players who have played together for a while, but a couple of captains, Kenny Moore, DeForest Buckner, talked about how they felt like they had ran into some issues with that, with egos, complacency, practice habits. How do you, as kind of leader of that group, go about attacking and diagnosing and fixing those type of things?
I just think that that can happen in this league, right, wrong, or indifferent. I wasn't here, so I can't speak to it. But I know this. Sometimes a fresh start for a coach or for players is a good thing. I know the standard of how we'll carry ourselves as coaches. We ask these guys to be consistent as players. I'll stand up there in front of them and say the same thing I'm saying to you. I want you guys to be this. I don't want a lot of that. And they got to expect the same thing from us. So my standard is going to be that I'm up there and I'm going to be a truth teller. I'm going to tell them the truth. It's my job to say, yes, you're doing it right, or no, you're doing it wrong. And that will happen, and it will happen to all of them. I don't care number of years in the league. I don't care. It's just something that I've always believed in. And
I like that.
Good players, great players want to be coached. Mm-hmm. They want to know the truth. All right, that's always been the case. And if they don't, then there's probably a little bit of an issue there. But the best ones I've ever been around, coach me hard. Tell me what you want. And I've always found that to be true.
Yeah, that defense, that's what they need. They need a guy that's going to come in here and call them on their BS. They need a guy who's going to tell them, you're not doing it right. And if they don't respond well, that's on them. And it sounds like Lou, that's kind of how he's been. And he's not going to apologize for that. And the defense does need some of that. They do need kind of a guy that's going to call them out on their crap when they need it, because there's a lot of guys that did a lot of talking this year that were not living up to the standard. And, if Lou was here last year, who knows if they would have been playing? I mean, honestly. So, yeah, it's definitely good to hear him say that, because it makes me think, he's a guy that's not going to be afraid. If somebody is struggling, even if they are, a guy that you're paying some money to, he's not going to be afraid to, move off of them if that is necessary, right? If they're not responding well, if they're not taking coaching, that sort of stuff, right? And obviously players like Buckner, Kenny Moore, some of those guys who have been around, who have been fairly consistent, they know who the guys are and who the guys aren't. So definitely will be interesting to see what does happen here, but it definitely is telling about potentially some guys that might not see as many snaps and some guys who may not be back. So I guess we'll have to see on that, but definitely appreciated that comment by Lou there.
Your first year in Cincy, you said you had to sort of retool personnel and everything.
Yeah.
And here is a fresh set of eyes from a coaching standpoint has value. You'll have another view of what these guys are expected of.
I think it's different. There was maybe some older players in Cincy when we got that. I see this as a different situation from that standpoint. I again just started evaluating these guys and look from afar, but we've got some good players on this defense.
6 years in this league is a long time in one job, right? So when you look back at your time in Cincy, what are you most proud about?
I said this when I left. Certainly the success that we had, taking that team to two consecutive, or helping that team get to two consecutive AFC Championship games, and then the Super Bowl, obviously. What we did this year wasn't good enough, but I was proud of the way they rallied. Never, as I mentioned before, a lot of teams in this league would have, raised the white flag and moved on, and we just don't. That's not how we operate. And we got better, and we just came up a game short from going to the playoffs, and then that's just the way it is sometimes.
This Colts defense struggled with tackling last year. How do you fix tackling?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything. I think there's some dynamic playmakers in this league, as we all know. Good luck trying to tackle, some of these guys one-on-one. So I think the more people you get around the ball, the better tackling team you're going to be. We certainly have our drills that we do to help that. And it's not just, hey, the rules limit us to when we can take guys to the ground, or be physical, during training camp, whatever. I mean, in my mind, just a little football, tackling is about timing and angles more than anything. So you can work on those things when you don't have shoulder pads and helmet on. You can do that anytime. So we'll make sure everybody's finishing in the right position, and it starts there. And then we have a process the way we go through to try to help them become better at that.
I know you like to be multiple in your schemes and everything like that. What's the balance between being multiple but also making sure you're not overcomplicating things for guys?
Yeah, good question. I think it's important that first and foremost, one of the things I said earlier was play smart, fast, and physical. If they're hesitant because they're processing things, then they can't play fast. So we'll balance that. Maybe we're not going to be early as where we were, left off. But, after being with a group of guys for so long, this is a fresh start. But we got veterans in there too. Like we may call it X, they called it Y. There'll be some similarities. So we'll play a balancing act. I'll never overload them with too much, so that bogs them down. I want to be out there processing, get off blocks, making tackles, and having fun.
How much the relationships matter to you? I've read some stuff that DJ Reader said, Jesse Bates, just how much respect they have for you. How do you go about building them?
I mean, I think that's why I do this. I come to work every day and meet, we've got this time of year, it'll be 40 some odd defensive players, whatever it is. And you got 40 different personalities with 40 different issues. And, it's something that I really like. I really enjoy those. You mentioned DJ, you mentioned Jesse, and all the guys that I just, we went through a lot, to get a place to where we got it. So you formed bonds during those tough times where things maybe weren't going so good. And then when you reach the pinnacle of the game and, 3 points short of winning the Super Bowl, those guys I'll be there for them forever. And I know if I need something, they'll be there as well. They're got a lot of respect for everybody back there in Cincy, and those players are great.
You mentioned how much Trey Hendrickson helped you out. You'll get another defensive lineman here who's pretty good, DeForest Buckner. Just what do you know about his game, and what does it do for a defense to have that type of talent in the three techniques?
Yeah, it's great, because then you're adding, I know I really like Latu coming out as well. So you get a guy inside, a guy outside. There's other guys up there too that can affect it. But when you got an athlete inside, like Buck is, his length, knocking, the simple thing of just batting balls down up at the line of scrimmage. That's something that we really stress, because that's one more down that the ball's not going down the field. So we're thrilled with him. He plays the run as well as he plays the pass. So I'm excited to work with him.
You said you've talked to a lot of players and met a few. Who have you run into here? Have you run into?
A bunch. Yeah. Saw him yesterday for a little bit. So I've seen a bunch of the guys, handful of the guys. Yeah.
What do the next few weeks look like for you, whether it's evaluating players or staff?
A little bit of everything. When you first get to a new place, and certainly in this time where if you're settled in, it's really player acquisition time, right? Free agency, draft, those things. So we've got to finalize things with the staffing, and then how we're going to just get all the playbook stuff done. And while we're doing that, we're managing the free agency and draft and things like that. So it'll be a busy time.
All right, so that is Lou Anarumo. So I kind of talked about a few of the stuff that he said at his introductory press conference, but just kind of want to highlight a couple different things here. Talking about, the fact that he does feel like the Colts, great organization. He appreciates, from everything from ownership down and all that stuff. One of the things he talked about, I already mentioned, the idea of being smart, fast, and a physical team as well. Not wanting to beat yourself, not wanting to have the mental errors. Communication was a big thing that he stressed as well. The idea of when you play different opponents, you got to be flexible, you got to be multiple, you got to keep these quarterbacks off balance. And the Colts are going to be playing a lot of good quarterbacks coming up this next year. And the idea also, which is something that's very refreshing, is taking away, the opposing offense's best weapon, and how many times have the Colts allowed these players to just go off on them, right? So, yeah, there were so many I liked here. He obviously mentioned liking Latu coming out of college last year. So you do wonder, could he take a big step here, with Lou at defensive coordinator, talking about just different stuff with the tackling, the fundamentals. I like the idea of getting as many hats to the ball as you possibly can. That sort of stuff that honestly hasn't been around, probably honestly since Matt Eberflus, the idea of, really emphasizing getting to the ball. There are players that are special, so it may take more gang tackles, but just a full out effort of everybody flying to the football, that is definitely a refreshing thing, 100%. And I mean, obviously he's only been here for 2 days, so there's a lot that he is still learning and still going through the personnel and stuff like that. But it definitely seems like early he, loves the idea of DeForest Buckner, what he can do, affecting the quarterback and, knocking down passes. Obviously he mentioned, Kenny Moore kind of in that Mike Hilton role of, coming off the blitz. And we haven't really seen Kenny Moore off the blitz really since it's been a while. It's been a while since we've seen Kenny Moore, the Kenny Moore blitz, which he obviously has thrived in the past. So there's a lot of good stuff here from Lou Anarumo. And obviously it's still very fresh, still very early. So we'll obviously have to see, he's still early. So we'll have to see from a free agency standpoint, the draft, all that stuff coming up in the next couple months, what does happen. But I think Lou likes the fact that he does feel like there is some pieces to work with here on the defensive side of the ball. Now, obviously there's going to be some pieces that are going to need to be added as well, but it is great to see. And I do agree with him. I think there is talent on this defense. It's just, there's been some unproven talent right now and some guys who aren't up to the standard. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But guys, Lou Anarumo, his press conference here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you like what he had to say? Anything you would like for him to say that he didn't say? Let me know all those things in the comments down below. But guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.